I'm also privileged to introduce you to Evan Clabots. Evan has a really cool background from RISD, Rhode Island School of Design. Then he wanted to get as far away as he could from his home state, and he went to Helsinki to study design. And what you're about to see and hear from Evan is going to be amazing. If you have a chance, just check out his Instagram feed, and you'll see some really amazing things. His aesthetic was really informed by Scandinavian art and Scandinavian design, and so when you just go through his Instagram feed, it's like the most amazing thing you've ever seen. One quick little story about Evan to loosen things up for him. He got his start actually watching his mom sew when he was a kid, and as soon as she left for work, he started sewing himself a pouch for pebbles in his slingshot. And once he had that, I think it was probably a holy terror. Anyway, without further ado, Evan Clabots.
Hi guys, I'm Evan. I'm going to use one of these chairs, I think. All right. Hi guys. So I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit today about the role of the designer in the modern world. And it sounds like a kind of a big and heady topic. And I was thinking about it, and I was trying to write this really academic presentation for you guys. And then I just started thinking, it turned into a biography, really. I started thinking about, this is a question that I struggle with a lot and have for the last decade. So here we go. I want to start with this quote by Paolo Antonelli, one of the curators at the MoMA. It says, "Good design is a Renaissance attitude that combines technology, cognitive science, human need, and beauty to produce something that the world didn't know it was missing." And that's a nice big sort of heady statement, I think, to start with. And I won't pick it apart too much because we're going to revisit it. But I think one of the most important parts there for me is this idea of something the world didn't know that it was missing. These were two statements I wrote trying to sort of define it at the beginning, back when it was really academic. And the idea that at times design is about style, about redressing of objects that we already know. Other times, design is about innovation. It becomes more about the creating of the world around us than simply styling it. So that's a pretty cool concept, and it's something that I don't know that we all think about, is that everything around us was designed by somebody. Somebody figured out that this is how this is going to work, that's how this is going to look. And I think we're really familiar with, design, architecture, all these sort of designophile objects. But I threw up the fire hydrant in there too, just because everything in the world is really designed, even sort of the mundane fire hydrant. Going to school, design school, I think we all sort of fall in love with these sort of objects of design fetish. Here we have the LCW by the Eames, the juicer by Start for Alessi. This is an Achille Castiglione lamp for Floss. And depending on your style, you might fetishize other objects, but when I got into design, these were the things that I really loved. But I want to design cool stuff. So I went to RISD, and I didn't really know that design existed. I thought I was going to be an engineer or an architect, and I actually went to RISD to check out the architecture department. And then found the ID department and kind of fell in love. And when I got there, I really wanted to design cool stuff. There we have a foundation year where we do all these basic art studies, and then we get into our program and we do another year of basic ID studies. And then our junior year, we finally get our first design studio. And I was really set on taking the chair studio. And unfortunately, I didn't get in. And I ended up in this guy's class, Bob O'Neill. And Bob O'Neill was a really sort of confusing guy. He was really old, and he spoke really slow, and he said really weird things like, "Speak to me in the language of drawing," which really frustrated me because I didn't really understand what he was saying. It was a really strange class, and he made us all get a subscription to the New York Times. So I literally got a subscription that would pile up at my front door every day. And he would make us read through it and try and identify reasons to design. I was really curious. I really wanted to design a chair. And I ended up picking a story about water conservation. And I kind of fumbled my way into this, this design of a self-cleaning razor. I had to sort of dig into an old paper portfolio and shoot this to put this up here. This is actually a syringe I got when I got my wisdom teeth out, sort of taped to a razor. The whole idea being we waste so much water when we're shaving, just running the tap. And if you could just suck up a little bit of water and sort of blast it through, that it would, save a lot of water. So this slide is, thanks, Bob O'Neill. I ended up designing this really ugly, embarrassing razor, not the next Eames chair. So after school, I went on to design a bunch of things. This is a watch that I designed and produced with my studio. This is some cookware for All-Clad. This is an expanding hard case luggage piece for Toomey. This was actually a Kickstarter project. I did sort of little device to amplify an iPad, which the sound really sucked on. I did go on to design some chairs eventually, and even some sofas. So this was all well and good, and this kind of satisfied me until I was about 30. Because when you get out of school, this is kind of what you want to do. And you're really excited to put things into the world, put your name on things. But by 30, I'd kind of looked back and I was like, all right, I've designed a lot of cool stuff. And this is when that idea that Bob had sort of stuck in me really early, this, where are the opportunities for design to make a difference today? And I was really starting to wonder, like, I ticked a lot of boxes, sort of, what's next? So this is about the time that I got my first opportunity to teach. A friend of mine couldn't teach his class out at NGIT, that's the New Jersey Institute of Technology, and asked if I could fill in for this semester. And so the class was a junior class, and it was on humanitarianism and sustainability, two things that I had never designed for in my life. So I basically stole Bob O'Neill's class. I went over there and I made my kids start, reading the New York Times, listening to NPR. I think most of their news came from Yahoo, but it was okay. But really getting them to think about, what's happening, everything from, technology to pollution, wars that we're waging, hunger problems in the world. I've got the election up there now. And it really made me think, and I was learning with these kids just as much. And we were looking into, projects that were based in real need. The Life Straw is amazing. I'm sure you guys probably know about it. But it's based in a real need about 783 million people don't have access to clean water. Almost 2.5 billion don't have access to adequate sanitation. 6 to 8 million people die annually from the consequences of disasters and water-related diseases. So that's a real problem in the world. And someone looked at that and they created a product. I think one of these Life Straws gives clean water for one person for 1 year. That's amazing. We looked at projects like the Hippo Roller, based in sort of real need. The average distance a woman in Africa and Asia walks to collect water is 3.75 miles. In some parts of Africa, women expend as much as 85% of their daily energy intake on getting water. Somebody looked at that as a real problem and designed this awesome product that you fill up the canister and you roll it and it supports its own weight and it's pretty easy to use. So we're exploring these projects and I'm really challenging my kids to find, read the paper, read the news, and find a change in society, a change in the environment, or a change in a market that presents a problem that we as industrial designers have the talents to fix. And it inspired a lot of really cool conversations, like, what is it that we do? Why should we do that and not an engineer, or an architect, or a scientist, or a researcher? What are those specific problems out there that we have the talents, we have the outlook, the way of looking at the world to explore? And this was one of the projects that came out of the class. It's called Lori. It was by Martha Nunez. And she found a story about an uptick in the number of amputees in America. And that was based on diabetes, but also, amputations from war injuries. And she was really trying to access that. What could she design for amputees? And she went and she did a lot of research. And the research was really amazing. She found, there's a lot of students designing artificial limbs. Prosthetics is the word I'm looking for. And you see a lot of really tech things, and I really wanted her to find out a reason if she was going to design one. And she actually went and met with a support group for amputees and asked them straight up, what do you need? What's difficult for you? And she found over and over they would say showering. They have these prosthetics, and they're meant to be worn for 18 hours a day, and they're custom, and they cost a lot of money. And so they take those off to go to the shower, and they end up sitting on benches, and they have rails, and they have all these different ways. Traveling to hotels is really tough to make sure that they still have the same amenities. Some people that are lucky to be on their second limb would use that limb as a shower limb. But what she did is she took that information, she kind of flipped it on its head. She said, instead of wearing this for 18 hours where it has to be specifically suited and tweaked to fit you, what if you only have to wear it for 18 minutes? Or maybe 8 minutes? How does that change the design problem? It has to be a lot less comfortable. You're wearing it for a lot less time. Would there be a way to create sort of a one-size-fits-all adjustable limb? You couldn't use this all day. It wouldn't be comfortable enough. But to give you support for those 8 minutes that you were showering, could you do that? And she ended up designing this piece. And it's made out of, I think, like 6 moldable parts. This thing could retail for $100, $150, $200. It's kind of based off a Chinese finger trap. And it was all just taking that problem and flipping it. Why would you design a new limb? That question of why was really key. So just changing the conversation from 18 hours to 18 minutes gave her the opportunity to design this. After that semester, I moved over to Pratt. It was a little more close to home in Brooklyn. And instead of doing a class on sustainability and humanitarianism, I really wanted to boil it down to this question, sort of, why does an object deserve to exist? It's a question my students, I think, started to hate. But I was always trying to get them to really dig in and ask that question. I'm doing a workshop tomorrow on, does the world really need another chair? And it's something we need to ask ourselves. We have these talents, and where should we be applying them? So this is actually a project by a student of mine from last semester, by Lucy Davis, who's actually here somewhere, right there. And it's really great. She was really interested in consumables. She was looking into things like the Swiffer mop with the pads that you're disposing. A lot of our industry is actually pushing disposable. It's continued revenue. You buy one piece and keep buying the other pieces. And she looked all around the house, and she was looking at all these things with disposables and really honed in on razors. And, either using a Bic razor or one of those Mach 3s or 5s or whatever it is that you clip the head into, the amount of waste that people were creating every day, every month, every year was insane. And so she asked that question, why again? And simply by taking that disposable head and separating out the metal blades, separating out that sort of co-molded piece that we're always dealing with, and she came up with this idea to make the blades stamped out of a piece of stainless steel rather than a co-molded cartridge. It didn't require the user to change their shaving habits, as other sustainable options, such as a straight razor and a double-edged safety razor do. And it was made of fully recyclable materials, cork handle. She designed it for, end of life as well, and it could all be disassembled by the user. And it was simply, asking that question again, why? Why are we creating these things? Which leads me to a really great quote from a cool design firm called Design and Flow. It's time to change design to design change. And teaching these courses really sort of opened my eyes. I didn't know about the trash island in the Pacific before I started teaching. And I really became aware that as designers, we have a certain set of skills. And it's really important to ask that question, why? Like, what in the world needs our efforts, our specific skills? The problem was, I looked back and it's like, I design things. I design a lot of pretty things. And I started to become really concerned that all the things that I'm designing are having a 5-year, a 10-year, at best a 50-year little stay in our lives. And then they're going to the landfill. And so essentially I'm designing things to fill a landfill. And I was really going through a crisis as a designer. I was like feeling guilty about creating more objects to fill the world. I started doing a lot of graphic design and branding work because I couldn't bring myself to create more objects. I was looking for that reason of why. And along came Other, which is the company that I co-founded with Joe Doucet and Dean Simone. This is Joe, and he came to me. We'd worked together previously. I was a creative director at a company, and he was an external designer doing stuff for us. And he came to me and he said, I want to start a company where we sell 3D printed things. And I think as designers, we're all familiar with 3D printing. I've been using it for prototypes for years. And I thought Joe was a little crazy at first. And I didn't really see, there have been other companies in the past. MGX was a company maybe a decade ago that tried to do this. And they made a bunch of really cool looking plastic lamps that sort of showed what 3D printing could do. And they would self-intersect and all this. And I knew that that didn't work out. And I said, Joe, I don't really know, why would we do this? And it was all about sort of changing the industry. This here is your traditional sort of supply chain. We make products often in far-off places. We make them in mass to make it efficient to do this. We pack them on a ship. We ship them across the water. We put them in warehouses. We heat them and we cool them while we wait to sell them and transport them to stores or to end users. And so the idea of this company is a new supply chain. We make all of our products on demand. They don't exist until somebody wants them. That's when they're produced, and we print them, not with one of these home printers, but some fairly sophisticated technology I'll show you in a second. And there we get a single product that we send to our customer. And so this idea of on-demand production was really amazing. We're not creating tens of thousands of things that sometimes don't even get consumed before they make it to the landfill. The other really cool part of this is that we don't have to be making in bulk, and as this technology grows, we'll end up having super hyper-localized production. So if you order a product in Australia, we can send the file to a printer there, print it, and send it to the customer there. If you order it in South America, it can be made and shipped from there. So it's opening up a lot of possibilities with this hyper-localized supply chain. I truly believe that this is how things are going to be made in the future. Additive technologies are really coming into their own and creating products that are useful and durable. And so this, for the first time, satisfied that question. Why am I creating objects? Why am I helping other designers create objects to put them into the world? And finally, this hyper-localized and this print-on-demand gave me a reason again. These are just some of the products that we do. And what's really amazing is that they're functional and they're durable. The 3 tenets of the company is that our products have to be functional, aesthetic, and useful. And finally, we have materials that that satisfy all of those. We're actually able to print in stainless steel. And you see the rings here on this coat hook are actually like a byproduct of how it's printed, and it starts to have grain the way that wood does. It's really inherent to the material. It's actually printed 1 millimeter thin. It's actually hollow inside, something that gives you a mass but uses the absolute least amount of material that you possibly could. This is the way the porcelain's made. We're actually printing molds and pouring a really special slip in there that barely shrinks. And we dissolve away the mold, then we fire and glaze, in a traditional sense. So this object really couldn't be made any other way. It's quite thick. Traditional porcelain, it would shatter. It's really developed out of a new technology and a new way of bringing products into the world. And this is where we kind of go full circle. I had the privilege of doing a project with the Eames Foundation a couple of years back and got to learn a lot more about this chair specifically and what the Eames were doing. And they were working with new technologies back in their day. And they were experimenting and saying, so we have this new technology, why would we use it? What can we use it for? And they actually reimagined the chair. No chairs looked like this before. And they were designing for their time and their technology because they were really seeking to explore. They weren't just making another chair. And so then I revisit this statement, and it's sort of, good design is a Renaissance attitude that combines technology, cognitive science, human need, and beauty to produce something that the world didn't know it was missing. And that's, on this end of it, I see a lot more in that statement, this idea of what the world is really missing. And I think that is the core of what we're supposed to be doing as designers. This is from a design studio, Give Studio, from their Instagram. And I really love this quote, and I use it with my students a lot. Our job is to ask why. And the why will lead to the how, and together show us the what. So I challenge us all to keep asking why.